Hello everyone, welcome to the daily news analysis of the Hindu newspaper analysis contributed by Vishnu IS Academy. Let us see the news articles for today dated 23rd March of 2022. These are the news articles listed here. Now let us see the first topic for today, a blow to equitable access to essential medicines. There is an editorial on this topic for today. The equitable access of essential medicines is being very much important topic in the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. Why? Because there is very much crisis between the developed nations and developing nations for essential medicines. In the backdrop of COVID-19 pandemic, there is the very much need for vaccines that are required for the COVID-19. But we are having some patent rights like IPR, intellectual property rights, right? We are having some regulations for few medicines. So, if the import of medicines from the manufacturing countries or developed countries to the needy countries are having any conditions or requirements, the very essential need will not be fulfilled. So, that is why few developing countries are arguing and asking, like India and South Africa. Countries like these are asking for waiver of intellectual property rights on these medicines and medicinal products. But developed countries are not agreeing for this. Why? Because they lose the profit coming out of it and they will lose their recognition and their property rights, right? So, that is why there is happening some content of contention. So, let us see in this topic, let us see what are the TRIPS, the trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. What are these? These are a set of standards fixed prior to give some conditions and standards to some products, not only medicines. These rights will be given to any manufactured product to some entity or an individual person, like that. TRIPS will be given for few products. From where these TRIPS were originated? It has come from the Uruguay round of GATT. What is GATT here? General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. At the session of the Uruguay round of GATT, the TRIPS were established and it works under the WTO, and it is an international legal agreement between all, it is very important, between all the members of nations of the WTO. So, all these are the important points to be remembered for TRIPS. So, like that, the issue so far is, like we have earlier discussed, the hindering timely provisioning of affordable medicine is the main issue. Here the European Union is proposing some mechanism, that is nothing but compulsory licenses. Compulsory licenses are nothing but the legitimate tool to give some permission to the medicines. So, what does it mean? Means with the compulsory license for required medicines, we can reach the requirement of the vaccines, medicines which are needed for the pandemic. This proposal was proposed by the European Union, but here if we consider the Quad nations, the Quad nations, India and Australia and USA and Japan. Considering this group, US is also supporting countries like India, and it is opposing the proposal of EU. So that's the issue so far is happening, but the best way forward for this would be to permit the essentially required medicines and vaccines without any rights and without any restrictions. That would be the best way forward to fulfill the requirements of the developing nations and the least developed nations in the area of medicinal requirements. Now let's move on to the next topic, that needed an Indian legislative service. Have you ever heard about any service like this? All Indian legislative service. We have so many all Indian services, right, in UPSC, but there is not such a service which is called Indian legislative service. Here we have to go deep into the subject here. Why? Because there are secretaries called secretary generals for the houses, right? Like if we consider the houses of state or parliament like Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha and legislative assembly and legislative council, there will be secretaries who will assist and guide the legislative members. So if these secretary generals have to be appointed, what would be their qualifications? What would be their eligibility criteria? Can they be acquired from some political domain, or can they be acquired from some civil servant? If we consider all these factors, let us see the importance of this secretary general. Right. Who is secretary general here? He would be a working professional in the legislative house. He would represent the legislative house and support his counterpart of legislative member. Like for if we say in state, that would be MLA or MP or MLC. So there would be some separation between legislation and executive. We have this doctrine in our constitution, right? There is a separation of powers in our constitution and in our administration. So that's why if we appoint this secretary general who would be representing the legislative part from the executive part, that would be a mistake. You got my point, right? So from now there is a tradition to appoint this secretary general from any experienced or retired civil servant. Retired civil servant. Who is he? He is clearly an executive. He was being representing the executive arm from so many years. If he is a retired officer, retired IAS or retired IRS officer, he was being representing the executive arm. But a post such as secretary general going to work in legislative field has to have some expertise in this political domain. So these are the, like here if you can see, unfailing knowledge, experience of parliamentary procedures, practices and precedents, like all these eligibilities should be there with the secretary general who is going to be appointed. So that's why we are coming to a conclusion that if the secretary general is going to be appointed from the executive experience, it is being considered that he may not do justice to that post. So that is the main basic background to suggest some Indian legislative service like this. So here the experts are suggesting to create an all India legislative service who can be recruited through some recruitment or some established procedure on which some R&D can be conducted. So if a new stream, a new post, all India legislative service can be created, he can fulfill all these things. There are secretaries in all levels in the administration all over the country, from the local bodies to the central, like in legislative bodies, panchayats, block panchayats, jilla parishad, municipal, and so on. So in all departments, in all sectors, there will be some secretariat posts, secretariat employees would be there, workers will be there. So to fulfill all that needs, we should have some all India legislative service. And also the lack of their own common public recruiting and training agency at the national level is also causing some discrepancies in this area. So that's why they, if he is to be recruited separately, he would get some training specifically for this purpose to work as a secretary in his level of field, right? And also the growth of modern government and expansion of governmental activities require such a separated and specifically recruited service. So like that, the importance of all India legislative service was discussed in this news article. Now let's move on to the next topic, a National and Monetization Corporation. National Land and Monetization Corporation, NLMC. Here we are seeing a key point, monetization. What is this monetization? Monetization of land. It is recently proposed by the Union Cabinet as a special purpose vehicle. Excuse me. So if we consider the meaning of monetization, what is monetization? Monetization is nothing but converting any property, any asset into some monetized unit. Like if we can say, government can give its assets or lands or any PSUs, any such assets can be given to private entities to as the part of monetization. It looks like some disinvestment, but disinvestment is some part of the monetization. Monetization is some broad concept. It can be like giving some land to some private entity for some time period, a specific time period. It is not disinvestment, right? Disinvestment means completely selling some government property to some private entity. So that's why disinvestment is the part of monetization. So that's how the monetization means the government assets like lands and PSUs, any buildings will be given to private entities to acquire some profits out of it. Let's see what type of profits we can get. The skilled workers can be appointed, the lands or assets unused or any assets can be given to private entities to use them for further purposes. By getting some profits from that money can be used by the government again, and it can be used to improve the growth of economy and further to create employment and ultimately for entire growth and development of the nation. So that's how the monetization concept will help to accelerate the economy. So in that context, our Union Cabinet is proposing some body like National Land Monetization Corporation. Now let's see what are the functions of this body. It works under the Finance Ministry, okay, and the corpus, the capital initially given to this is 500 crores and additional 150 crores will be added into this later on. So if we consider the functions of this, it manages and monetizes the given assets. It works as an advisory body, it is important. It works as an advisory body, okay, and also it identifies and monetizes surplus non-core assets. Identification is also one of the function of NLMC. You will get confused what this NLMC will do. Not only just monetization, it also identifies, it also works as advisory body, it also works in the management field, and also it acts as a directory of best practices in land monetization. So it would do research to find out the best practices to reach out the monetization techniques. Okay. So now let's move on to the next topic. Yeah, here right now we have discussed that any land assets being surplus, like if a government entity is there, okay, it is the land area given to this, but it is the land area given to this office, but it is a surplus, right? So that surplus land asset being vacant, being unproductive, can be given to any private entity by doing monetization. So like that, the surplus, unused, underused, operationally seized and put for strategic disinvestment, all these categories can be given to private entities under the concept monetization. Who will do all these works? The NLMC. Currently there is 3,400 acres of land available for monetization under central public sector enterprises. Okay, now let's move on to the next topic. Right, Supreme Court clarifies on BS6 vehicles registration. You might have heard this word very many times, like BS6, BS4, BS5. Let's see the background concept of this BS6. What is BS here? Bharat stage, Bharat stage. There are much environmental pollution in the globe, right? And most of the percentage of this pollution is being produced from the polluted vehicles, not only from the industries, and vehicles also contribute to this poisonous pollutions, emissions. So to control these, the world nations had formed some norms. Those are called Euro norms. These are nothing but European standard norms. So these Euro norms were suggested in 1970. From there onwards, they come till Euro 6 in 2014. This is the national scenario. Now if we consider India, there are some standards specifically set for India. They have been started in the year 2000. In the 2000 year, these are called India norms. India norms 2000. Okay, that is not BS1. Remember, if you get any critical question like that, there is no such BS1 in India. Initially, it was named as India norms 2000. Later on, BS2, BS3, BS4 and all were introduced and established, reforming the norms considering the environmental changes. Okay. So now presently we are in BS6. BS6. So what happened for BS6? Earlier it was introduced in 2018 in Delhi. So it was introduced in 2010 in Delhi. In 2019 it was introduced in National Capital Region, that is NCR, and in 2020 the BS6 is introduced nationwide. The BS6. You are clear, right? Right? So that BS6 was being implemented from the year 2020. Now what Supreme Court has given that the registrations of vehicles of light and heavy diesel vehicles used for public utility and essential services. These clauses are also important. Those vehicles, light and heavy diesel vehicles which are used for public utility and essential services are opened. The registrations for these vehicles are opened. The Supreme Court has announced that. That is the news here. Okay, and this is under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and also like here it is Euro 6, right, and we are in BS6, right. These two are complementary. We are in line with the Euro 6 norms now. Here you might have known some point. Earlier we came till BS4, but after that we skipped the iteration BS5, considering the long term duration that it might have taken to reach BS6. So to match the world norms, international norms, we have skipped 5 and we have entered into BS6. Okay. So that is the all important points and facts regarding the BS6. This is very deep concept, ma. For BS6 also we have to study all the norms, all the conditions which are changed, and all the fuels. There are BS6 fuels also. There are separate fuels and there are separate engines and vehicles. You have to study all these. It takes a very much long time. So for now you try to learn these facts. Okay. Now let's move on to the next topic. Report lays stress on digital skill training. Digital skills. What are digital skills? We are in the digital era right now, and also after facing the COVID-19 pandemic, the crisis, everyone, every entity and every employee were forced to work from home, to empty their companies, offices and work from home. And also the developed digital era is requiring the upskills, digital skills, the newly emerging digital skills from the employees. So in this scenario, if we consider the employees skill, digital skills, there is much lack of these digital skills for the employees, which is the reason for the job loss. This is also being one of the important cause for the joblessness or unemployment. Okay. So if we consider the digital skill training, what are there in the on-demand skills in recent times? There are cyber security skills and accounting and software skills and online collaboration, developer tools and data science. Like this, all digital skills are in trend in recent days. The employees, even the older employees or young employees or freshers, whoever want to work in this area need to learn all these skills. But who will teach them? Who will give them platform to acquire those skills? So that is the issue right now. If we consider a WEF forum, report, World Economic Forum report, the investment in upskilling will boost economy. It is the evidential point for us. If we can consider the upskilling and investments are increased in that area, that will boost economy very much better way. And also the reasons for low digital literacy in India. If we consider the reasons, maybe the less affordability, right? Less affordability for maybe poor students to acquire those highly expensive skills, and also digital skills shortage in our nation, and standards of institutions. It is very much concerning point in recent days. Why? Because any BTech graduate, Bachelor of Technology, he is the Bachelor of Technology, he became a graduate, but after coming out of his college or university, he is not matching with these skills, he is not acquiring those skills which are required in a work environment. So here the lack of standards of institution is the biggest reason to produce such a graduates. So that has to be addressed. And also digital skill shortage. There are so many skill platforms all over the world, but not up to the mark in India till now. And also lack of adequate remuneration for the people who are going as a fresher. In that work pressure, the freshers were forced to work more and more for the less remuneration. So all that should be balanced. And mass migration, it is also one of the main concern. Okay, we consider these unskilled graduates. Let's consider some graduates are skilled, but they are not working in India. They are migrating to the other nations for better pays, for better remuneration. So we have to consider, we have to create such an environment in India itself, so that we can capture our own technicians, technical skilled workers in our India, so that we can add that to our economic growth of India. And also lack of proper R&D in this field. Now let's move on to the next topic. Most of Ganga claims Jal Shakti Ministry. There is this news is there in the headlines from so many years, from the announcement of scheme Namami Gange. You might have heard this scheme, right? The Namami Gange program has been introduced to clean the waters of Ganga, to clear the pollution of Ganga waters and to clean the waters of Ganga. The scheme Namami Gange has been introduced. So now recently Ganga water was very clean. This news was announced by the authorities. If we can consider what is the clean thing, what is the quality of water, how can we calculate the purity of water, quality of water? If we go to the technical terms of that, DO, dissolved oxygen. This is the concept we learn in our schools. The dissolved oxygen is nothing but the amount of oxygen that is dissolved in water bodies. Water naturally absorbs some amount of oxygen, right? So the natural percentage of oxygen that is present in the water is nothing but dissolved oxygen. But this DO works as indicator of water quality. How it works? Now let's consider this concept. This is the water. Let's say the DO of this water is balanced. If it is balanced, it can be told as the water is pure. But if this DO is less, Means what? There are so much of microorganisms, contaminants, microbes in that water, so that they are consuming this dissolved oxygen, so that when we calculate the dissolved oxygen of this water, it is showing less DO. So that means what? Less DO means that water is polluted. Right, and there are some cases of higher DO also. In some cases, like in cold water, DO is higher when compared to warm water. You should know this comparison. You should have some idea on this comparison. And also, if we consider running water, in this also the dissolved oxygen is higher. Right, this is the concept of dissolved oxygen. If we consider BOD, what is BOD? Biochemical oxygen demand. It is nothing but it is also the dissolved oxygen present in the water that is required for the natural microbes present in the water to absorb and digest the organic materials as their food. Confused, right? I will tell you clearly. If we consider in a water body, there is an organism. It is living in that organism, in that water, and it wants to have some food. Some food is there, but without breaking this, without digesting this, how can it intake this? How can this microbe intake this food? So, to break down and to digest this food item, it will need some oxygen as a power source. Like for plants, the power source is sunlight. Like that, for organisms, for living organisms, oxygen is the power source. So that's how, if we consider the oxygen required for the microorganisms to break these organic materials, that is called biological oxygen demand. And if we consider the COD, chemical oxygen demand. Chemical oxygen demand is nothing but here the organism is breaking down this organic material, right? But in COD, same breakdown of this organic material, but not through the organism, but by a separate chemical process. In a laboratory, if we do the same test in a laboratory with some chemicals, the oxygen required for that mechanism is called COD. Now, I hope you understood all these concepts. So, recently we have seen that statement, right? Ganga water is clean. They have said that these DO and BOD and COD levels are up to the mark, up to the level in the Ganga waters. That's why the researchers and experts have concluded that Ganga water is clean enough to have some devotional baths and all, etc. Okay, now let's see the situation of Ganga water before 5 years. Now we are saying that Ganga water is clean. But what happened earlier? What happened before 5 years? So there used to occur industrial effluent, domestic waste and agricultural residues. All those used to be in the Ganga waters. Okay, so to clean all these waters, we have introduced the Namami Gange scheme. In this background, we need to learn some facts here. The Ganga catchment area lies in 11 states. Try to remember this. This is the whole Ganga basin. If we can see, these are the states: Haryana, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, West Bengal. All these Uttar Pradesh, all these states are called states that lies in Ganga catchment. Let me say once: Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, Delhi, Haryana and Himachal Pradesh. Done. So, let's see the scheme in detail. It is introduced by the Union government and it has some fund, Clean Ganga Fund. Right? It has some fund, Clean Ganga, and it is a it is an integrated and flagship program. It is implemented by NMCG. Okay, and it is launched under Ministry of Water Resources and River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation. It has some 8 pillars. You will need these 8 pillars point wise in your mains exam. You need not worry in your prelims for this. And there is established some new Jal Shakti ministry. Recently, to work under these water areas, the environmental clarity and Ganga water cleansing mechanism, the ministry, a new ministry was established. It was launched by merging two ministries. The earlier said ministry and other ministry is drinking water and sanitation. It is very important. Okay, now let's move on to the next topic. Fitch, the rating agency. Fitch has announced recently that India's growth forecast has come down to 8.5% from 10.3%. Okay, now let's see what happens with this rating. How our economic growth would be affected. In 2022, growth forecast was given for this forecast was given for the year 2022. The reasons for this reduction were the inflation hikes and higher energy prices. Let's see the concept here. Why? Because the oil companies are increasing their prices. So that's why energy prices are getting hiked. If prices are getting hiked, the inflation will also increase. If inflation increase here, let me say, if it increases in a very higher manner, it would affect the economy in a negative manner. But we will study in our economy that rising inflation is beneficial for the growth of economy. Yes, it is correct. Why? Because the rising inflation under some particular regulations, specific regulation, will be beneficial for the growth of economy. But the hike in the inflation is very much higher, it would affect the economy. It is a live example for this mechanism. Okay, so remember this concept. Now let's move on to the next topic. The minimum support prices. The minimum support prices for jute were recently re-announced. The 250 rupees higher was announced. So, in this backdrop, let's see what is the MSP. MSP is nothing but the rate at which the government will purchase the agricultural goods from the market, farmers. Okay, it is the rate at which government purchases. Clear? And also, who will fix the MSP? What are the bodies, who are the authorities behind this MSP to fix the rate of MSP? Here, a body is there, CACP. It just recommends. Remember, this word is important. It recommends the MSP. And CCEA, Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs. It approves the recommended prices. Okay, here the CACP will clearly recommend the rates for Kharif crops and Rabi crops. For each and every crop, it will announce the MSP depending on the market scenario of that year, of that month. Okay. So, like that, if CACP recommends the MSP, the CCEA will approve that MSP. So this scenario happened earlier, so that's why the hike in MSP for raw jute was announced. And also there is a criteria for MSP to decide the cost of MSP. So to decide the MSP, its cost should be 1.5 times higher than the cost of production. Okay, randomly they don't fix the MSP. There is some fixed criteria to decide the MSP rate. So the MSP rate should be at least 1.5 times higher than the cost of production. So now let's see some prelims facts of the day. NLMC 2022. It is a joint military exercise between India and Seychelles. Okay, it is the joint military exercise. Remember the fact between Indian Army and Seychelles Defence Force. And one more fact is that BOMA technique. It is very much in use. There is a concept behind here. BOMA technique is nothing but to capture and translocate some group of animals. This technique is useful. It is basically there in African countries. It is nothing but if we want to capture an animal, a herd of animal, a group of animals, a cone-like, a funnel-like structure would be constructed. Okay, a funnel-like structure would be constructed by arranging some artificial green mats, grass-like mats. By getting attracted with those artificial mats and all, these animals would enter into this. After considering, after gathering required amount of animals, they will close this and they will enter into the narrow structure, and from there they will be being entered into the truck, and from there it will be easy to translocate those animals from one place to another place. Now why we are studying this technique now? Recently the spotted deers are being translocated from Kealadio National Park of Rajasthan to Mukundara Hill Tiger Reserve. It is also in Rajasthan. So that's why the BOMA technique is very much important. These are all the news articles for today. Have a nice day. Thank you.